Who's your emergency contact? Who should notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. I'm in Bloody Beaumont. When I first got to Bloody Beaumont, when I first got into the system, they used to sell you cases of orange juice, 100% orange juice, cases of grape juice, all sort of different variety of sodas, but they sell you a pound box of sugar and honey. So everybody in there knows how to make wine. Some people do it to drink. Some people do it for a hustle, but it's always plentiful, So when I got to Bloody Beaumont, it was no different. In my cell, I stay with a batch. I keep a batch under my bunk. I come down every 3 days. Sometimes we get like one of these one-day wonders where the kicker is about the size of a mop bucket, about this big, and all you have to do is pour a pound of sugar on there, a gallon of water, tie it up, and the next day, if you put it up that evening about 6 o'clock, the next day, 12 o'clock after lunch, during 4 o'clock count, you're ready to strain and get drunk. So imagine the whole yard is running around intoxicated. That's why I always tell you in a few episodes here and there that, in Bloody Beaumont, I'm up at 5:30. No matter if I'm drinking all day, the day before, wherever I'm doing, everybody in the yard is intoxicated. I'm up at 5:30. I grab my knife. I put on my shoes. And I go brush my teeth. Because you never know what has transpired the day before. Like for me, I'm a happy drunk. I can't drink anymore because I'm on probation, but I don't get rowdy. I don't get emotional. I've never been in a confrontation because I was drunk or while I was drunk. Because I don't drink just with anybody anyway. I drink with my selective few, and we drink to have a good time. We don't drink to let our anger out or our feelings and emotions that we've been holding. I'm not one of those dudes. So, but that's not the same for everybody. Some people say crazy shit when they're drunk. Some people do dumb shit when they're drunk. But being drunk is not an excuse. Whether you say it sober or you say it while you're under the influence, the words are the same words. And people's going to perceive it the same. Some people might have the courtesy and let you sober up the next day before they butcher you. Or others, they might just do it right there and then. Well, I have this friend named Castro, Adrian Castro. We met in 2006 in Beaumont. We was in the same block, CA. And we were just together again right now in Florence before I left. Me and him became really good friends. He's from Dallas, Texas. Big old Mexican. Used to play football in high school. A little bully, a little aggressive, but it's a good dude. Like every interaction I ever had with him, there's never been a penny short. He's one of those, my close friends that I can trust with things. I still, try to reach out to the people that's still locked up. If they need something, I try to do my best to help them out because I've been there. I've been in that situation. But they also understand that I'm out here and just going through the changes that is the world, and that things aren't easy out here. But we have a rapport, more than a rapport. We're good friends, And he was young when he was in Beaumont. I was young, and we were just buck wild. He used to work at he used to work for the post office. And what he went to prison for was he was robbing the money van or the money car. I didn't know this until he told me the story. He ended up with like 65 years. But I guess every day or however many times a week, the post office would go pick money up from different businesses. He worked in the post office, so he knew all the inside ins and out of the operation. So he would wait for whatever day that these vans or cars, it's just civilians, they're just postal people. No guns, no armor, truck, nothing. They go and pick up these money from these different places, and he waits until they go to their last stop. So they got all the pickup for that route. Then he pulls up and just grabs the bag from them. And I think he told me like the least he ever got out of one of those things was 80 grand. And the most was like 200 something grand. He was just doing it him on the low. How he ended up being in jail, because I don't want to be mistaken, but I think it was somebody that his wife knew, an uncle or something, that worked in a different post office and was kind of like peeping the game and brought Castro a proposition, say, hey, man, I know this route, they pick up this much money, but Castro, he doesn't want no crime. He has no co-defendant. The only co-defendant he had was his wife. And he told his wife to go ahead and testify against him so she would go home because they had 2 kids. But his wife refused. And she ended up going to prison for like 10 years too. She's home now, but Castro is doing 65 years. Hopefully, God willing, some of these laws that come down will help him out. When I left, we were just waiting to hear, back on one of his motions. But anyway, so he played dumb. He played like he didn't know what was going on. And that fucker, either his wife's uncle or cousin or something, ended up calling the feds on him. And that's how he ended up in Bloody Beaumont with 65 years because of bitch-ass rat that ain't had nothing to do with what he was doing. So while we're there, one day, he gets a check from the post office, his retirement check, because I think he worked at the post office for like maybe 6 or 7 years before he got caught up. And they sent his ass a $27,000 check. You're in prison, we struggling, we doing whatever. This motherfucker gets a $27,000 check. So you could already imagine what he's gonna do with it, party over here, right? So leading up to what I'm about to tell you, I had got my knife, I had dropped my knife behind the locker. In the locker in Beaumont, you can't just move them around, they're bolted to the wall. So I had one of my friends come from CMS, where they're the one that fix the lights, they have all the tools and stuff. They come and take my locker off the wall so I can go back there and get my knife. So they find my knife. I had one like this big, but also back there hidden behind the locker was a big ass machete, literally about this long. Like, I don't know if you can see it, like literally like the length of my arm, right? It was cut up. It was sand down. It was a very imposing piece of metal. So I get it, and I'm just like, man, like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? I can't carry it around. It's a freaking sword, right? Because mine's about 8 to 9 inches that I always keep on me. And so I got this freaking big ass machete. But in prison politics, you can't sell knives to other races. I mean, you can do whatever the fuck you want. But if the person you're selling this knife to decides to turn around and tell your people that you sold them a knife, then you're gonna get butchered for it. Because everybody in there, even though you're friends, we're all potential enemies at one time or another. Because when the line is crossed, and it might not, me and Castro might be cool. He runs Solano. He's from Dallas, Texas, but he runs Solano, but he had enough respect that, you know, the TS, they speak for the Solanos as far as politics comes. But they had enough respect for Castro, they allowed him to be the voice of the Solanos. So if my homeboy gets into one of his other homeboy from Dallas or another Solano or whatever, and we're going to crash, if we can't mediate it between me and him, then we're going to wreck. But we're friends. We can still be friends understanding that. And, you know, some people have a hard time, you know, comprehending that type of stuff. But you can be friends and understand that I might have to kill you if it comes push and shove. Because we still have to stand on our principles and stand wherever we're going to stand. But I mean, for sure, if there was ever a situation between his homeboy and my homeboy, we're going to do everything that we possibly can to mediate it. And if we can't, then we just go wherever it takes us. So, of course, I go over there, but like I say, I have the rapport with him, with different races of different gangs, different colors, that I know if I say something, if I do something, that it's not going to come back on me. You know, and if I even think that it will, I won't deal with you in that aspect anyway. So I go to his room. You know, he's already drunk. Him and 3 of his homeboys, bunch of dude boys swinging on his nuts because he got money or whatever. You know, a lot of times, like, even though we have some people around us, we still recognize that they're not up to par, up to the standards of who we are. But they're not such a bad guy that we still accept them or whatever. It's a complicated environment. Let's just put it that way. But we're over there, and he's drinking. You know, he's showing me his new system that he just bought. You know, people in there are very skilled. They're talented. They take our clock and pieces from our radio and little pieces from the computer. You know, that they steal from wherever, and they make an amp and build speakers and all sorts of shit. You know, I can't do any of that stuff, but so he's in there, he's bumping his system, he's kicking it with him and 2 other of his homeboys. So I tell him, I say, "What's up, man?" I say, "What's up?" I say, "Hey, you got some money?" He said, "Yeah, you know I got money. I just got a check." I was like, "Nah, I want cash. I don't want no damn check. You got to, you know, that check gets deposited into his account." He goes, "Why? What you got?" So I reached down my pants and I just freaking pulled the sword out. You know, and he's like, "Oh shit, what the fuck?" I said, "What's up? You want this?" He goes, "Hell yeah, let me get it." So I gave it to him. I gave it to him for 7 books. That's 7 books of stamps, not like reading books. You know, we call stamps books, and 7 books. 1 book of stamp is equivalent to $5. So I sold it to him for $35. You know, usually you can sell that shit for like $100. You know, because everybody wants, you know, to stockpile their armory. So I give him, I sell him the knife. So later on in the evening, he's down there, and I'm upstairs. I live upstairs. He lives upstairs, but they got a poker table down at, you know, on the flats. I don't know what's going on. I'm just up there drinking. You know, I do me every day. So he's playing poker. I see him get up. You know, there's a few white boys on the table with him. I see him get up and pull the knife out on the white boy. Talk about, "What you want to do, bitch? I know you's a whole ass bitch. What you want to do?" And the whole unit stopped. And the TS, the Texas Emmet, because he's Mexican, he's from Dallas. So now it's a Mexican and white. So all the white boys get up, all the Mexicans get up, and they all go over there. And, you know, from my perspective, I can't really hear the conversation. But they pull Castro away. The other white boys take the other white boy, whatever white boy that he was having the confrontation with, to their room. It's already late. It's already like 8 something. So we get locked down. Boom. I know prison politics. One of the rules you have in prison, you can't pull a knife out on somebody and don't use it. You can't sit there and call somebody a bitch and not be held accountable. So, I know what's coming. Castro knows what's coming. The whole unit knows what's coming. So Castro his cellie was this guy, he's half Mexican, half white. His name is Wedo. He's a good dude. I used to train with him. He was into that MMA stuff, really tough. And he knows his shit, you know? So I trained with him a few times. So the next day, this is the conversation that was relayed to me after the fact. They only had two choices. Either the Mexicans and the whites get into a race riot, or they got to punish Castro because he was the one at fault. He was drunk and wilding out and called the other dude all types of hoe and bitches and pulled a knife out on him. So the TS approached Wedo, that was his cellie / best friend. They gave him the choice. They said, you want to handle it or you want us to handle it? Now, if the TS handles it, the TS is going to have to stab him because that's their rule within their own organization. They don't beat the TS, the Texas MA, the Norteños, all these gang members, they don't beat you up off the yard. If you have to be removed off the yard, their policy is to stab you. And that is hands off. If there's no disciplinary, DP, punishment and none of that shit. If they got to put their hands on you, they're going to stab you. So Wedo knows that if he allows the TS to do it, they're going to stab him. So instead, Wedo took it upon himself and said, man, I'm going to handle it. So at this time, I don't know, I'm not part of the conversation. So I go about my daily routine. So the next day, at 8 o'clock recall, when I'm coming off the yard, 8 o'clock, they call everybody back to the unit. When I'm coming off the yard and I go into my unit, there's a CO out there smoking a cigarette. And right when I get, maybe 20 feet to the door, because the CO was out in front of the unit, I see Castro comes out. And he's fucked up. Like, he looked like the Elephant Man. Like, his shit is over here. His shit is all busted up. And I seen it, I was like, damn. So he comes up and tells the CO, let's go. And the CO looks at him. He's like, what the fuck? Because, he's busted up. But Castro didn't say anything. Castro respected the policy. He knew what was going on. And he knew he couldn't be on that yard anymore. And he also knew that getting his ass stomped out like that was a courtesy because he could have got butchered and killed. But he took it like a man, accepted it, nodded his head. All he said was, let's go. And he was like, what, man, what's going on? He said, man, I said, let's go. And they took him to medical and locked him up in his shoe. And, later on when he got transferred, he went to Pollock. He was still in good standing. There was nothing foul or bad about him. He just had to eat his medicine. When you jump out there, when you run your mouth, when you do certain things, you got to accept the consequences that comes with it. And he did. When I got back in the unit, they told me what had happened. They said he was playing cards. And Wedo came up to him and tapped him on the shoulder. He said, hey, you know what time it is. But Castro, he knew what time it is. He was ready. He said he got up, pulled out his lock on his sock, and swung at Wedo. But I tell you, Wedo knows that MMA stuff for real. He said he slipped it back and pieced Castro up. And then another dude that they had was another bigger Mexican. When Castro was on the ground, he just started jumping on Castro's head like a trampoline. Even though that was still considered like a courtesy that they didn't stab him or try to kill him, but getting your head stomped out is not a guarantee that you're going to come back and be all right. You know, and like I tell you, when you're caught up in that confrontation, man, you kind of zone out. You know, if anybody that's been in confrontations, you can relate. You can understand what I'm telling you. There's no logic in the madness once you're caught up in the storm. But like I said, whether you agree with what we're doing or things that we've done, just like Castro and we're still good friends. We're men of principles. And we understand when we fuck up, there's consequences. We understand certain action comes with certain risk. And if we still feel like it's worth that risk, or we're willing to put our lives on the line for whatever it is, then that's what we're gonna do. Because over here on this side, man, we don't mess with kids, we don't mess with wives, or girls, female, I'm sorry. But I messed up the outro. But anyway, we don't tell nobody and we accept our medicine. Welcome to the USP.